And with that, I think we are going to go ahead and start. I'm going to be passing the microphone down, and you'll each have a chance to introduce yourself if you have an opening statement as well. Once the four of you are finished, I do have 2 statements from the candidates who are not able to be here. So, all right.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Bockhorst, and I want to thank the Chamber for sponsoring this event. I think that it's important that people carefully consider what qualifications assembly members should have. The Ketchikan Gateway Borough has an annual budget of $74 million. It levies taxes amounting to $20 million a year, and it provides 27 different essential services for the community. And voters should carefully consider who they want to serve in those positions for a borough assembly. I believe that individuals would generally agree on the following characteristics. Experience. In that respect, I have 40 years of experience in local government in Alaska, 10 years of which was as borough manager here in Ketchikan. Being a good steward of the public treasury is another important characteristic. While borough manager, the area-wide property taxes in Ketchikan were reduced by more than 25%. Personal property taxes were also limited during the time I was borough manager. In the general fund for the Ketchikan Gateway Borough, the balance was restored to a healthy balance. Prior to my coming here, it was $2.9 million, and when I left, it was $8.4 million. Being accountable and transparent. I think that's important that public understands and has trust in the workings of the local government, that compliance is strict with the Open Meetings Act. And while I was borough manager, I helped institute laws that were stronger in terms of the Open Meetings Act and public disclosure. Ethics is critical in being a public official. And I think that that is essential to earning the people's trust in government. And you can't have trust without ethics. Capable, it's essential that the assembly members be capable of carrying out the duties of the office. Again, I have more than 40 years of high-level service in local government in Alaska. I worked in that position 40 years, only in 3 different jobs. So that's an average of just about 14 years in each position. And I think that demonstrates and speaks loudly to my capabilities. I wouldn't have survived and served in those positions without being capable. In every case, I left those jobs on my own will as opposed to being asked to leave. And lastly, I think it's important to be well prepared in the position. Assembly members have to take the time to understand the complex issues that come before them. And I have the time, being retired, and to make the commitment to perform well and carry out those responsibilities well. So again, with 40 years of experience in local government in Alaska and 10 years as a borough manager, I'm confident that I can step into the role of borough assembly member. And I would ask your support on October 2nd. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm James Montgomery. I want to start by saying thank you, and thank you for considering me as your candidate for Borough Assembly. I'm a fairly long-time Alaskan. I lived in Anchorage for 15 years. We fell in love with Ketchikan over 15 years ago, when in 1994 we spent our 10th anniversary here when we got waylaid by Alaskan Airlines on a layover. And we moved to Ketchikan over 4 years ago. I'm probably not your typical candidate. I'm a square peg in a round hole. However, what I can tell you is that I strongly believe that we need to take care of education for our kids. We desperately need affordable housing. We need to address the budget. We don't need to chop it, snip it, cut it, upcharge it. We need to review it, decipher it, and untangle it. I've always been fiscally responsible. However, I'm very creative when it comes to knowing how to stretch a dollar and how to best use it. I want to be the type of assembly person who will work with you to always try and find a solution to questions and to concerns that are put forth by the community. Because I am passionate about what I believe in and what I will do, I will fight to get what's right for the people of Ketchikan, not just for today, but for tomorrow and for tomorrow's tomorrow. I'm running because I want to be a conduit for the people of Ketchikan who want to have a connective voice for the Borough of Assembly. I'm James Montgomery, and I would appreciate your vote on October the 2nd.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for showing up this afternoon on this lovely Wednesday afternoon. My name is Felix Wong, and I am running for re-election. My platform is community mindedness. I moved here in 2013, and I'm still proud to say that I've never looked back since. With the many people I've come to know over this short period of time, I've come to respect the commitment that everyone here has to their community, the amount of love that you guys have for your fellow residents, for people who are not able to do well for themselves, all the way to people who have major influence. So there's this sense of community that I would love to advocate for, as well as education. Within the next 5 years, 50% of the teaching workforce is slated for retirement, and that's going to be a big problem. I personally still remember the names of my primary school teachers, my kindergarten teachers, those who have asked me pointed questions and still get me thinking today. And with the teachers we have here in Ketchikan, they have that same spirit. And even though I'm not a parent, I can still imagine that if I would have a child, I would like to have my children exposed to people who care. And these people who care, they need to be able to live comfortably here in Ketchikan, Alaska. So that's also whom I advocate for. On top of that, I also support some creative ideas for solving some of our town's problems, and I'm very willing to give an open ear. Once again, I'm Felix Wong, and I'm running for re-election. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Austin Otis. I'm probably the youngest person here. So I'm born and raised in Ketchikan. I graduated K-High in 2013. Went off to University of Alaska Anchorage and got my degree in criminal justice. So I came back and I started working for the tourist industry. I just got involved in hospitality. And then I started working for a nonprofit called Ketchikan Youth Court. So I have some insight in both of those industries. My campaign's really focused on economic development, and what I mean by that, my goal is to provide long-term jobs for Ketchikan. I'm really looking at having a task force to pair up with the shipyard to combine their people at Vigor with city officials and borough officials to really try to figure out what kind of contracts we can get from the state when it comes to ferries, and what kind of local employment long-term that we can employ here. And then second, I'm really focused on education as well. Being a public school, a K-High student, I think funding to the cap to invest in educational professionals and students is very important. I think it would be a disservice to our students, our parents, educational professionals not having schools funded to the max. You really get what you pay for. But in this, we need to find additional sources of revenue, such as the pill tax or sin tax, or yes, even marijuana tax, to help alleviate property owners and their taxes that they do to schools. And then lastly, I really want to focus on housing. For me, I think housing is one of the biggest issues in Ketchikan, and the borough's in a good position. They own around 12,000 acres, and I think these areas need to be developed to take pressure off of elderly housing, such as the Pioneer Home. We need to build more senior homes. I think apartment complexes for seasonal workers that come here during the summer months, and really building middle-class income houses for long-term residents such as myself. The borough gave the McDowell Group, which is an independent group, $56,000 for housing assessment contract, and we know what they're going to say. They're going to say we need houses, so I think we should take their findings and implement it. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you all very much for that. I am going to read the two statements from our candidates who could not be here. So First, we have from Danielle Pratt. As previously stated, my campaign is based on a platform of listening. I am not too proud to admit that I don't know everything, but I am an active and enthusiastic listener. I want to hear your thoughts, your hopes, your concerns, your advice, your expertise, your perspective, and your story. If elected as a Borough Assembly member, I intend to support and advocate for the aspects of this borough that made me fall in love and choose to make my home here. The students, the arts, the history, the environment, and above all, the people that live and work here every day, who collaborate and support one another across all social, economic, and political platforms. I work in the schools, I play in the arts, I stand for the people of Ketchikan Gateway Borough, and I would be deeply honored to be elected as a member of the Borough Assembly. And from Mr. Sven Westergaard, I have, hello attendees of the Ketchikan Chamber of Commerce Luncheon. I am sorry I could not be here today. My name is Sven Westergaard, and I was born and raised in Ketchikan. I love this community that has shaped me into the man I am today. I'm not a polished politician, but I do have love for this community and want to help it to become the best it can be. As a telephone lineman at KPU for the last 15 years, I've seen and felt the decline and rises of our community. We need careers in housing that will entice good people to move here or come back home. We need our representatives to do the right things for the right reasons. So for that reason, I am running for a Borough Assembly seat and I am asking for your vote. Thank you to all that have attended. Have fun and stay safe. And now I'm going to move into the questions. I have alerted our candidates here that they will have 2 minutes to answer each question. I will be timing those on here. I promise I'm not checking text messages. And that I have little note cards that I will be popping up to let them know what their time's going to be. I know that some of you did touch on these items in your opening statement. If you did that, please expand upon those ideas as we ask. We're going to pass the microphone back down again. Mr. Bachers, if you would start with, do you have any specific ideas for enhancing and encouraging economic development for our island?
As far as economic development in Ketchikan is concerned, I think there is one thing that is done well by the Ketchikan Gateway Borough, and that is to develop important and sensible fiscal policies. I'll give you an example. The Ketchikan Gateway Borough has a number of property tax exemptions and sales tax exemptions. I don't think there's anything better that the Ketchikan Gateway Borough can do for economic development other than to maintain these exemptions. Just in terms of the sales tax exemption for senior citizens, that allows seniors to come here to Ketchikan and stay here in Ketchikan when they retire. And in the last 20 years, the number of seniors in this town has doubled. And today, they comprise 15 to 19% of our population. And one can imagine what a tremendous resource senior citizens are. And yes, they're exempt from taxes, but by the same token, exempt from sales taxes, I should say, by the same token, they demand much lower services. They don't have children in schools, and children in schools are the single biggest expense that the Ketchikan Gateway Borough encourages or has. We also have in the borough fiscal policies that allow bidder preference for local citizens and other fiscal improvements that the borough government has. It's important to note that the Ketchikan Gateway Borough's Economic Development Fund has been exhausted. So the only additional expenditures for economic development that the borough undertakes will come out of the general fund, and that means more taxes for people.
Okay, so I look at things very differently. Probably everything I look at very differently, which is why I don't fit in the normal brand of things. Economic development is essential in everything that we do. We don't always fit the brand here, which is why Alaska is so unique in what we do. We have amazing mariculture and aquaculture. We have opportunities for things that we can do outside of the box here. I don't see a whole lot of people that go to the Borough Assembly just to sit and listen to some of the things that happened there. We have a few people on the Assembly that probably aren't as involved as maybe they want to be, which is why some of us are up here. And we have some people that are up here that are running again, which are really involved, and some that have been involved. And you see some amazing things which are happening there. And there are some unique opportunities that are out there which have been presented that if we went out and after them, like the new things that just last night were presented to the council on mariculture and some new exciting adventures which are out there that if we would just go after them, we would see some unique opportunities which would bring new business and new culture and new monies and new growth. All we have to do is go after it. It's there. That's what I think.
With regards to economic development, I believe economic development has the capacity to solve two problems at the same time. Firstly, it will help diversify our economy. Secondly, and what I hope the most, is that it will help solve to some degree the aging population. Thank you, Mr. Borkos, for bringing up that point, as well as Mr. Otis for also highlighting the fact that places like the Pioneer Home are facing pressure that they're not able to accommodate the growing aging population. So, firstly, I do hope to see, as Mr. Montgomery brought up, more incubators, organizations that help encourage more entrepreneurship, to kickstart ideas and accelerate them so that they can start hiring people and grow to the point where future K-High graduates can go pursue their further studies in the hopes to come back and invest in our economy, grow our businesses, and hence reduce the aging of our population and call Ketchikan home once again. Thank you.
So I look at the borough's involvement in economic development. I really see that in 2015 they invested over $600,000 to Oceans, Alaska for mariculture. I really do think this is kind of the future for seafood industry here in Alaska, Southeast, for example. And you really see two innovative companies that have spawned out of that investment. Ketchikelp, which makes relish from local seaweed products around here. And you see the Hump Island oysters, which are producing mariculture products and create jobs to add to the local tax base. But I think the most important economic development that we're sitting on right now is vigor. I think vigor is our key ticket that helped replace dwindling jobs from the pulp mill. And I really think that if we keep the contracts from the state coming to this company and to Ketchikan, we could have a good line of people from the schools to get hired into this company. So those are my two important economic development ideas. But also I think tourism, since it is probably half of our economy here in Ketchikan, and then I work for it, just providing new places for tourists to go in Ketchikan and completing the boardwalk that is going to the whole waterfront of Ketchikan. So yeah, that's my ideas on that.
All right, thank you everyone for those questions. We're going to start the next question, and we're going to start with Mr. Montgomery, kind of wind down and wind back, just so that everyone has an opportunity to answer a question first. We'll go on down the line like that. Our next question is going to be, do you see Ketchikan facing any resource management issues that you would like the borough to address if you are elected as part of the assembly? If so, what are those issues and what ideas do you have?
Do I see, say it again, do I see?
Do you see Ketchikan facing any natural resource management issues?
Natural resource issues.
Natural resource issues.
Oh, natural resource issues. Management resource issues that don't have anything to do with forestation and don't have anything to do with Title I, which is bouncing up against us, and don't have anything to do with mining and don't have anything to do. I think there are all kinds of issues that we have to face right now out there, and it's hitting up against us from 17 different sides. Yes, I see all kinds of issues that we have to face on a daily basis. And I think Ketchikan in itself has its own problems that we face from all 3 different 15 sides on there. We're fighting the ferry, we're fighting forestation, what we do with the forest, we're fighting with mining that's creeping down our side. What are we going to do with the people that I talk to that really think they can bring LPG in here? We're fighting with 1 minute. We're fighting with... there's a plethora of things that we have to deal with. Do I have the answer for it? No. Do I want to discuss it with everybody that I know of that I can discuss to figure out how we can address it? Yes. Do I have the answer? No. I wish I did. But I'm willing to figure out the answer and to try and fight for it so we have a way where we can be a part of the solution.
About natural resource management, first things first, fishing. Fishing is a big part of our economy at this point in time, and whatever policies that are coming down the pipe that could preserve that or help enhance it, I would be very supportive of. You know, there's no denying that climate is changing in a way that affects the patterns of migration of the salmon. If there's anything we can do to kind of alleviate that, I'll be looking forward to working through that. Also, besides that, I remember reading about the possibility of the change in the roadless rule, which could, to some degree, revitalize the logging industry, and that would be a cool problem to solve as well, about, you know, how we can get back into it without totally destroying the look and feel that we have of our Tongass National Forest.
So I think the 3 important areas for resource management around Ketchikan is really mining, timbers harvesting, and fishing. When it comes to mining, we have some pretty big mines in Bocan and Niblack. And I think to tap into those economic areas, you really need to build roads and Prince of Wales to access those if they're going to be viable in the future. But when it comes to mining, we need to pick areas that have an environment impact statement that don't conflict with our major salmon spawning streams. Historically, Alaska has been a state where natural resources are extracted and they leave our state, and we don't get any benefit from it other than the companies that do it. So I think building places here in Ketchikan to process minerals and to process the rare earth metals that are coming from Bocan and Niblack is very important. But more getting on to logging, I think right now there's about 2,500 acres of state land that's on Valner Bay right now. They're looking at about 12 million board feet is harvestable from this. And the Forest Service has gone with a multi-use forest plan that I really agree with, that includes tourism, but also includes the logging industry's input. And we're really they are focusing on second growth, which I think is the future of forest products that are coming out of Ketchikan, like wood pellets that are being used at the library for the heaters there, and at the airport, which is cost saving for us. So.
As far as resource development is concerned, I think it's important to, first of all, reflect on the fact that 0.3% of the land within the Ketchikan Gateway Borough is privately owned. Most of the land, of course, is in the Tongass National Forest and is locked up. Hopefully, there will be modification of the roadless rule that is currently being considered in Congress. And I think that, as has been stated here, timber has a great potential for our community. As far as fishing is concerned, that too is very important to our community and is a keystone currently of our community. The Ketchikan Gateway Borough some years ago did totally exempt taxes on personal property, and that was a big benefit to commercial fishermen. And as far as mining is concerned, the borough has worked with both Bocan and Niblack mines to try to promote their operation. I think that there is greater capacity in the future that we're gonna see a mine opening with respect to rare earth elements. And again, I think those are the principal points as far as natural resource development.
Okay, thank you all for that. Our next question is, have you reviewed the borough's financials? Please provide some comments on the current budget, changes you would make, and overall financial position. And we're gonna have Felix answer this one first, and you might have a unique perspective, but.
So with regards to the borough financials, you know, with the good work that the borough and those before me have done, it is my belief that we are in a very good position, you know, especially when I was elected and attended the Alaska Municipal League. One of the things that I hear a lot from fellow elected officials from other municipalities is that they wish they were in as close to a financial position as we were at the time when the state was facing a possible $4.3 billion deficit. So this time when the state isn't facing as big of a deficit, I believe we are in a position where the sky really isn't falling. Within the first year of hire, our current borough manager has led department heads to a 10% expenditure cut. So there's really no reason why we cannot fund things like higher pay for our educators who will pay back to us in greater dividend, because as business owners, it is in your interest to want to hire people who are competent, and it's schools who will help grow these kids to become very competent people to join the workforce and hence contribute to our tax base. Thank you.
I agree with Felix that we are in a better position on than the federal level and the state level when it comes to deficits and our own coffers. But I think our really golden ticket in Ketchikan is tourism. The CPV funding, I think, really helps supplement our budget. That's the commercial passenger vessel fees that we collect from tourists. I think that really helps the borough alleviate some of its burdens that it has, and investments that it needs to make in tourism. But also, I think we're really innovative of creating sin taxes, what we just did, a $2 a pack. Even though people may disagree whether it deters smoking or not, I think it is a good revenue source for supplemental budgets such as the school district. And I think the new blossoming marijuana industry, I think, is we can really tap into that. And I think that will provide a lot of tax revenue for the borough. So the borough, I think it is a better position than most cities in in Alaska, and I would like to see us keep investing and using a wide variety of taxes to diversify our budget.
As far as the Ketchikan Gateway budget is concerned, $74 million, as I indicated previously. I think it's important to recognize that our taxes compared to Sitka, Wrangell, and Petersburg were anywhere from 23 to 43% higher than those three communities. We're slightly higher than Juneau is, and our budget, about 2/3 of our budget goes for education. I truly think that there are some threats that exist with respect to funding of education. First of all, Secure Rural Schools, which provides about $900,000 a year for our education, that program will expire in 25 days. The chances of it being renewed, I think, are very questionable. The only reason it was renewed and funded in the last 2 years is because of the signing of the $1.3 trillion omnibus bill. So I think that's one threat. Already this year, the Alaska Department of Education has projected that our school district will get $900,000 less than it got in the previous year. So that's another threat. Of course, there is ongoing collective bargaining between the teachers and the school districts, and we don't know what that will cost. In the last 3 years, I think it's also worthy of recognition that the Ketchikan Gateway Borough has increased area-wide taxes by $2 million. So I think that unlike some folks here believe that everything is rosy, I think that there are significant threats out there. And I think that there has to be considerable diligence on the part of the school district and the Borough Assembly to deal with those threats.
Well, to make this easy, I'm going to say I'm 50-25% that with everybody else. I actually think we're in pretty good revenue stream side. But I think we really need to look at how and where we're spending it. I can tell you that in my career, 25 years in hotel management, what I do better than anybody else in this industry, except for a few people on television, is go into hotels that are in trouble and look at their budgets and flip them and turn them, because I can find problems and I'm really, really good at it. And what I have not had the opportunity is sit down and tear the budget apart. So that's something that I would like the opportunity to do, is go in and look at this budget line for line, piece by piece, and be able to tell where to save the money and where to stretch it, because I am really good at doing that. And when I take the revenue that we have and assist the rest of the people on the assembly, I think we will be okay, because we're really good at doing that in Alaska and in Ketchikan.
Okay. And our next question, we're gonna start with Austin. If elected, the community will have voiced their decision to trust you in this position. Given that, do you think it is your job to represent the community by voting based on constituent input and feedback, or based on your own existing core values?
I think it really comes down to what the constituents and the community wants. I think they look at a person. I try to really get away from this dogmatic approach of people being entrenched in party politics and ideology, and I really try to go out in the community, and I try to go to different departments in the borough and just get information, because I don't know everything. And I think that if I see their perspective, they help me see my perspective. And me being young, I'm coming up against a lot of people that are older, and they don't necessarily see my perspective. So I think that it's important to engage with the community and not use your own personal biases when you're voting on the Borough Assembly.
Yep, awesome, thanks guys.
As far as whether you take your own technical knowledge or listen to people, I think you have to do both. Some individuals have advocated, in fact, a number of individuals have advocated that we should fund our schools to the cap. I think they don't recognize that doing so would increase our property taxes, depending on where you live in this community, anywhere from 20% to 35%. As I indicated before, we're already 23% to 44% higher than Sitka, Wrangell, and Petersburg. So I think it's important for an individual, a public official, to listen to constituents, but it's also important to recognize that if you're a technician and an expert and you've worked in the field, that consideration should also be given. And I think it's important to have a dialogue with individuals, that if they want to fund to the cap, that they understand what that costs, and if they want other additional services, what those will cost. And it's important for an assembly member to balance the demand for services with the capacity of the community to pay for those services.
Well, I'm hoping that if a constituent votes for me, they vote for me because they know where my heart is. And if I'm going to vote a certain way, I'm voting a certain way because the constituent put me in there knowing how I will vote. And the one is the same.
So I believe I have a record for listening to people. I've also been very involved in numerous events around town throughout the year, maybe too involved. So I've had plenty of opportunity to listen to your feedback, your perspectives, and also at the same time, you know, we all live here on an island, and there's really no time or energy for an adversarial spirit of animosity. That's not how I play my game. That's not how I want to see the borough go down the road of. You know, when it comes to technical knowledge, I will admit that I don't have as deep a experience nor capability as Mr. Borkos, but at the same time, I fully trust our borough staff. We have hired some really fantastic people in the borough, and it is their knowledge, their expertise that I trust as well, that I would, you know, seek advice from, seek input from as much as the constituents. So, you know, once again, borough staff are our friends and our family as well, and they, of all people, don't want to see their own taxes raised, so they would have the knowledge to feedback to us on the Borough Assembly on how to best proceed to solve problems. Thank you.
Okay, so we only had one audience question, and I'm going to interrupt my own line of questioning because I think that this is actually a very valid question that needs to be addressed, and we're running low on time. The borough has only in recent years had a positive working relationship with the city and the school district. What is your position on remaining cooperative on issues such as school funding and supporting the community library?
The city of Ketchikan and the borough, I think, have worked well together in the past. While I was the borough manager, there was a committee created for cooperation between the city and the borough government. And I think it's essential that the two work together. There are some things that the borough government has exclusive responsibility for and the city is not involved. For example, the schools. While it's also important, even though the borough operates the schools, if the city has concerns about those, I think it's important to express those. There are some things that we work cooperatively with between the city and the borough. And an example of that is our fire departments. Of course, there's mutual aid agreements between the two governments. There's also the dispatching that occurs with respect to the city operates the dispatching, but the borough pays for dispatching of areas outside the city. As far as the library is concerned, the city of Ketchikan owns the library, but the Ketchikan Gateway Borough contributes for services, library services by the people outside the city of Ketchikan. And that agreement has been in place for several years and it seems to be working well.
I think a comment that Mr. Wong said brings it full circle. We're a little island. We all have to work together. It's essential that all the services all work together, and I know that there's a committee that speaks to that, and I would strongly advocate that we maintain that.
I share the same sentiment as Mr. Montgomery. You know, there's this one coworker I had when I was working at the shipyard whom I'll remember forever. You know, he's this one really hardline conservative guy, like, don't you raise my taxes, Felix. You know, and when I brought up, you know, the contention that we had at one time about funding the library, his one comment was, the first sign of the fall of a civilization is when we shut our libraries down, and that just blew me away. So, with that in mind, I will always seek to advocate for continual education, continual access to resources for education and learning, because if we don't allow ourselves to have access to other ideas to grow from our current position, we'll find ourselves boxed in, and that's not a healthy position to be in, psychologically, philosophically, or economically. Thank you.
Great.
So I think that the borough should continue its funding and its support for the library because I think borough citizens out in the borough definitely use the library just as much as people in the city do. And I think it's important for kids to go to and for resources for low-income people to go there and use the computers and whatnot. But I think what we really need to focus on, the sharing between the borough and the city, is nonprofit funding sharing. I think it's important that we invest in these nonprofits and have equal revenue from the city and the borough going to them. And also tourist funding sharing, helping use CPV funds cross governmental lines and investing in areas that both benefit the borough and the city, such as Saxman. But lastly, using task forces. I think this is a really good idea for economic development, such as the Vigor idea, the Vigor Shipyard idea, getting everyone on the same table and advocating for jobs and areas in Ketchikan where we can improve.
Okay, we're just getting right to the end of our time here, so I'd like to open it up to closing statements. If you guys have any closing statements that you have prepared, I'm gonna limit those to 1 minute, just so that we're all kind of ready to wrap things up. I'll give you the 30-second and 10-second cards. And as we opened with Mr. Bockhurst, I'm gonna go ahead and close with Mr. Otis over here.
Thank you for all coming out today. This is my first time running for office or doing anything, coming in front of people like this. So to wrap this up, I'm really focused on two things personally, is really providing a new perspective in government to get a younger demographic to vote and engage in local politics. I think we need younger candidates to run for office that can connect with younger voters and bring new ideas to government. I think we have the people that are governing. I think there's a natural gap between those being governed and those that are in government. And I think lastly, community engagement. I look at representatives that have good representation, that engage with the community by being on various local committees. They go to entertaining events and then they talk to citizens. I think that's the best way to connect with people and connect with voters. And lastly, just doing community service and connecting with citizens as much as possible. That's my my plan to run if I get elected. Thank you.
In closing, firstly, I'd like to thank you for giving me the honor of serving you for the past term of 3 years. You know, I'm going forward. If I get elected, I'll continue to have my boots on the ground approach, meet you face to face, be involved in community events, and hear from you. Not just that, but I'm very active on Facebook, and also you guys appear to be very active on Facebook as well. And you know, I receive plenty of Facebook personal messages about their ideas, about their concerns, and I do my best to respond to them, even though I really should cut down on being online so much. But once again, that's just part of how I roll in my commitment to the community, and I thank you very much.
Well, I was really good at writing the opening, and I didn't write a close, so I'm just going to wing it just for a second to say thank you very much. I hope you'll consider me on October the 2nd. My goal is to be able to be accessible and to listen to what you have to say and hopefully be a conduit to the assembly. And we'll just see how the chips drop, and thank you very much.
Thank you again all that came here today. I think that my 40 years of experience in local government and 10 years of experience in Ketchikan Gateway Borough have served the community well. I think it's important to have local elected officials that are knowledgeable about the decisions that they're going to make, and that they do interact with individuals and get their input. I think it's critical that the community has confidence in the elected officials, that they're going to be open, transparent, and trustworthy. Thank you.